I was in a rush that night, the cold wind biting at my skin as I hurried down the empty street. The city was alive with neon lights and distant sirens, but I was too lost in my own thoughts to care. Another long shift at work, another night drowning in exhaustion. Then, I saw him, a homeless man, sitting on the sidewalk under a flickering streetlight. His clothes were tattered, his face covered in a thick, unkempt beard. He was shivering, his arms wrapped tightly around himself. I should have kept walking, but something about him, his posture, his presence made my feet stop. "Hey," I called hesitantly, "do you need help?" The man slowly lifted his head, and that's when my blood ran cold. He was staring at me like he knew me, like he had been waiting for me, and then he spoke. "You look just like her." A chill ran through my body. I didn't know this man, and yet his voice, it tugged at something buried deep in my memory. "Excuse me?" I asked, my throat suddenly dry. He exhaled shakily, his breath visible in the cold night air. "You have her eyes, same as when I last saw them." His voice cracked. 20 years ago. My stomach twisted. Who are you talking about?" His gaze didn't waver. "Your mother." I staggered back. This wasn't possible. My mother had died years ago, and my father had left us when I was just a child. I barely even remembered him. He was nothing more than a ghost in my past. And yet, something in my gut told me this man wasn't a stranger. Against all logic, I helped him up. He was weak, his body frail from years of hardship. I didn't know why I did it. Maybe curiosity, maybe something deeper, but I took him to the nearest diner. Inside, under the warm glow of the lights, I watched as he devoured his food. His hands shook as he gripped the spoon. I studied his face, my mind racing. There was something eerily familiar about his jawline, his eyes, like a memory just out of reach. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't decipher. Guilt, pain, fear. "My name is Daniel Carter," he said slowly. The room tilted, my heart slammed against my ribs. That was my father's name. I pushed my chair back so fast it scraped against the floor. No, that's impossible." He sighed, running a trembling hand over his face. "I knew this day would come. I knew one day you'd find me or I'd find you. I just didn't think it would be like this." My hands curled into fists. My father left when I was 5. He disappeared. My mother told me he was a coward, that he abandoned us. My voice was shaking now. "And you expect me to believe that you're him?" He reached into his coat with shaking hands and pulled out something small, placing it on the table. A photograph. I stared. It was old, the edges frayed, but I recognized it immediately. It was a picture of me as a child, sitting in the lap of a man whose face was now covered by years of dirt and hardship. My throat closed. My head spun. It was him. Tears burned in my eyes, but anger flared in my chest. "Why?" I demanded. "Why did you leave us? Why did you let me grow up thinking you were dead?" His face twisted in pain. I had no choice. "Bullshit!" I hissed, my hands slamming the table. A few diners glanced our way, but I didn't care. "You don't understand, son," he whispered. "Don't call me that." His lips trembled. "Your mother's family, her father, they never wanted me around. They hated me. When she got sick, they blamed me." He swallowed hard. "And when I tried to take you, they threatened to destroy me. They did destroy me." My pulse roared in my ears. "You're lying. I wish I were." His voice was barely audible. "They had power, money. They set me up for a crime I didn't commit. I lost everything. I tried to fight, but I lost." He exhaled shakily. "And they made sure you would never look for me." I felt like I was suffocating. My entire life I had believed one story. And now, this man, this broken, homeless man, was telling me another. And the worst part? I didn't know which one to believe. Silence stretched between us. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he finally said, his voice hoarse. "I don't deserve that." He looked at me, really looked at me, and whispered, "But I never stopped loving you." A lump formed in my throat. I should have walked away. After all these years, I should have left him there, let him be nothing more than a ghost again, but something inside me wouldn't let me. I reached forward, my fingers brushed against the old photograph, and then, slowly, I met his eyes. Maybe I wasn't ready to forgive. Maybe I wasn't ready to accept everything he had told me, but I was ready to listen. And sometimes, that's where healing begins.